When I went to my community, I was made fun of. When I went to my community, they would be like, what sins did your parents commit for you to come out like this? They would say all kinds of like really heinous stuff.
According to the World Health Organization, 15% of the world's population are living with a disability. For World Disability Day, I wanted to speak to Muslims living with physical disabilities about their concerns with stigmas and stereotyping, the response from the Muslim community, and advice for Muslims who identify as having physical disabilities. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for being here. Really is an honor, and I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. There does seem to be a stigma or kind of a taboo around people who identify having a physical disability. And this is coming from someone who's outside the community. You know, I don't really know much. So I guess my first question to you, even if it does seem obvious, is whether there is a stigma. And I guess what kind of were your personal experiences?
I think there is a stigma, and it is a taboo not just in our community, but the world at large. And I think you only need to hear about the experiences of people with disabilities to know that it exists all around the world. Of course, in some communities and in some parts, it's worse than others, but it exists everywhere. And I think while the dial is moving in the right direction in most places and in most situations, I think we still have a long way to go. And as someone beautifully said once to me, don't diss my ability. Because the word disability tends to have very negative connotations. And it's about changing that and looking at disability as a different ability and winning hearts and minds. Because obviously there's one thing to change policy and to bring in legislation, but the real win is when you win hearts and minds. And of course, on the 3rd of December, just like it has been for the past 28 years or so, is the United Nations International Day of Persons with Disabilities, and a great opportunity to kind of ask those some very difficult questions and to really get to the bottom of, number one, why is this such a big taboo, but more importantly, what can we all do about it? And I think all of us, regardless of whether we have a disability or not, have a huge role to play in all of this.
I think a lot in our Asian communities and our Muslim community, anytime there's something that is different, it's seen as bad. And the reason for that is because oftentimes in our communities, our parents always say, well, what will people think? What will this auntie think? What will this person think? That's always the main focus of like their thought process. It's always on their radar about what are other people going to think. You know, growing up as a young girl with a disability, I always was put in this position of, Maria, if you do this, what will people think? If you act like this, what will people think? But why do other people's thoughts matter? My disability is something I can't control. My wheelchair is something I can't control. So other people's opinions don't matter, and they shouldn't matter. And I think the reason this stigma heavily exists in our community is the severe lack of education. There is so much talking that needs to be done in our institutes, in our mosques, in our masjids, everywhere. We need to be having these conversations with the right people and having the right people come up and share their experiences, thus creating a conversation and a lead and push to change. Because I feel like as Muslims, we are very responsible for caring about the most vulnerable population and those who need help. It's our duty, yet we fail so heavily. We need to make this active change, and we need to make it now. I always say that I never want somebody to grow up the way I did. I want them to grow up happy. I want them to grow up loving themselves. My disability doesn't define me. It's just a part of me.
I think all of us have agreed that there is some level of stigma against anyone who's perceived different. But I guess my question is that okay? Is there an excuse for this type of ignorance and lack of concern, I guess? I mean, are you tired of it? Or are you hopeful for a community?
So I don't think you can excuse something like this in terms of ignorance, but I think what you can do is explain it, because unless you're made aware, unless you come across someone who is different to you, unless you have that conversation, it's really hard to be educated about it. And I think with many things now, we are seeing a greater drive to be proactive, right? So I heard someone recently articulate themselves really well when they said, it's not enough to be called I'm not a racist. What's more important is to say I'm anti-racist, because that's where action comes in. And similarly, when it comes to disability as well, which is a huge taboo, It's about being proactive. It's about speaking to people with lived experiences and really being open about what life's like, because that's the best way to educate yourself. Even though I've grown up with a disability, I never really knew what life for other disabled people was like who perhaps had a different disability. And only when I started to have that conversation did my eyes kind of open to the possibility of, wow, these guys are absolutely amazing. And it's about starting somewhere. At the moment, the trouble is we live in a society where we think we have freedom of thought and freedom of speech, but we actually don't, because we're so scared about being politically wrong, and it's all about political correctness. And what happens then is you come to a situation where people are afraid to even ask the question, because if they're perceived to ask something that's not politically correct, the blame's on them. And I don't think that's fair. So yes, while I am tired to an extent of telling people over and over again, even sometimes the basics, I am really hopeful, and I still continue that fight because I think it's important. If we give up, there's not really going to be any hope. And you can, look at lots of things in the past, lots of some fantastic changes that have happened around the world over the past few centuries and decades, and they've come because of persistence, and it's come because people who were voiceless got a voice, just like we are here, to talk about it and to invite people to say, come and ask me whatever you like. And the amount of times I've been, let's say, on TV or talk to people and said, ask me absolutely anything you like. There is no wrong or stupid question. And I've had some really interesting questions, such as, oh, because you're blind, does it mean when you come home you don't turn on the light? And the answer is yes, I don't, because I don't need it. It's about being comfortable, being uncomfortable.
The best way to engage with people that has been my mission. I have spoken in many groups, as I personally have written 2 of my books with my autobiography with my condition to subject to appearance. Many various programs I've been in. I try to be open and not shy away from about conversation about my disability. I haven't always been this way. In the past, when I was brought up in East Africa, people were very insensitive and would often call me names due to ignorance and lack of understanding.
Sorry to hear that. It's really frustrating, but it sounds like, unfortunately, it does happen a lot. It's not excusable, but it does seem to happen. Even in our mosques and community centers, I'm curious to know all of your thoughts on whether it's accommodating at all. Or if it's, because oftentimes it's like hush hush, when it comes to people who identify as having a physical disability. So many mosques don't even have a wheelchair ramp. So I guess, what are your thoughts on how accommodating the Muslim community specifically is?
I live in Toronto, Canada, so I'm super far away from everyone else. So here I would say we have like a 80-20 ratio of accessibility, and that's really bad. Growing up, I never found solace in my Canadian community. People here were really racist to me because I'm Muslim, because I'm Desi, because I'm Pakistani. They make fun of my food, the whole 9 yards. And so my logical thought was, okay, if I'm getting made fun of by Canadians here, I might as well go back to my own people, like where I come from, my roots. So that logic completely flipped on me, because when I went to my community, I was made fun of. When I went to my community, they would be like, what sins did your parents commit for you to come out like this? They would say all kinds of really heinous stuff. And masjids wouldn't be accessible. Sunday school wasn't accessible. None of I couldn't enjoy or do anything that all my cousins would do. And it made me feel really left out. And I always thought when am I going to find an organization or something that is Muslim, made, that is looking out for people with disabilities? And, to my surprise, as I started making content on social media, like on TikTok, on Instagram, I've been blasting my opinions and my big mouth everywhere. I never stopped talking, literally never. And when I started talking and people started paying attention to me, I got in contact with this organization here in Canada. They're called Smile Canada. And what they do is they make lives for youth and children with disabilities so much easier. You know, I got in contact with them and now I get to work with them. I get to raise money for charity. I get to speak about things like intersectionality.
Being relatable is really important, right? Because if someone doesn't see themselves in some ways with your story, it's really hard to relate. And that's where the whole thing around empathy comes in, because some people are just apathetic and don't really care. Others are more sympathetic. And I'm sure a lot of us here on this call can relate to people in the mosque being very sympathetic and kind of pitying you, which is a wrong emotion to show as well. It's all about empathy and kind of putting yourself in someone's shoes. And when I came to the UK 5 years ago, I'd never been to the West before. And I was like, wow, this place is going to be phenomenal. And in many ways it was. And it was a real shame when I went to our community. While the people were absolutely incredible, it's sometimes about those microaggressions and about not really understanding. Like, I don't understand why, if I go to a mosque and if I want to pray, that people would offer me a chair. I mean, I'm a young guy who can make sujood and all that stuff. Why would you give me a chair? Or why would you treat me like someone who's really different? And it's about, not making the other person feel that they're inferior. And I know that's never the intention. And that's why I keep banging the drum on. We need to talk about this, and we need our scholars on the member to talk about some of these things, because unless these things become normal, they're always going to be taboo. Sometimes it's just asking a simple question, Jessica, like you did. What else can I do to make this more accessible for you? And it's not a difficult thing to do. I often tell people, do not assume, don't say, let me help you, because that's wrong. You're taking control away from me. Ask the person, what can I do to help you? Or is there something that I can do? Because that's when you're putting control in their hands. And obviously do it in a way that is not patronizing, that doesn't make them feel any less.
I'd rather people talk to me about my disability rather than them making assumptions and thinking, okay, this guy, yeah, what do I do? Do I give them a braille menu? Do I give them, what do I do? And then they just make assumptions without asking me. I mean, I'd rather they ask me and they feel stupid for 1 minute and then they become more wiser for the rest of their lifetime, rather than make assumptions and feel stupid for the rest of their lifetime. And that brings me on to, I think it was a story about the Prophet that still resonates with me today. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to the mosque, and at the mosque there was a person who was hard of hearing. And because he was hard of hearing, every time he talked, he used to talk really, really loudly. So people used to complain to him, saying, look, you talk really loudly, I cannot hear anything else. So this person became very embarrassed. But the way the people treated him were very rude, very unapologetic, very inconsiderate. So as a result, this person ran away. He stayed at home and he decided, what's the point of me going to the mosque, because I'm just going to disturb the people, I'm just going to be an inconvenience for everyone. The Prophet heard about this, and the Prophet said, why did you do that? Bring him back to the mosque. So that story resonates with me because it shows that even in the core belief of Islam, it shows that we have to accommodate everyone, regardless of race, regardless of religion, regardless of color, regardless of disability, regardless of anything. We have to accommodate everyone. And the best way to accommodate everyone is to talk to them.
Ayad, I'm curious as well what your kind of almost before and after experiences were, especially in terms of mosques and community centers.
So I've been diagnosed for almost 2 years. So a majority of that, all of that time has been while I've been at university. So I've not been home enough to kind of be involved in the community and see how things may have been different since then. I know that like the Islamic societies or the students on campus and the university unions are always looking to be more inclusive. And up until now, I feel as though I've kind of, thankfully, like against what you might assume, I feel like I've received the support that I've needed. And I think like I said, although the stigma still exists, people do understand that it is something that we need to talk about, something that they may not understand, but then they want to understand it better. And so I think, like Mason said, like making it easy for them to kind of ask questions and see where they can help, as opposed to kind of making these assumptions. We as the individuals who kind of advocate this stuff, we have to be confident enough to be the people who will talk about this stuff and kind of be there if ever someone has a question. It's important for us to be there as a face of it, kind of to, I don't, in a way, reshape the way that people think.
Obviously, for a lot of disabled people, life is incredibly hard, and it's great to shout about it because that's really important. But I think what's even more powerful is to equip that with actual solutions and say, how can I actually contribute to making this better? And I think on this call today is a great example of how we're doing that, because the first step really is to talk about it.
What is the game plan, I guess, after this call? What are some active things that people can do to be better accommodating, to stop with the whole kind of pitting attitude, maybe to feel comfortable enough to open, up and be able to ask questions? I guess, what would you recommend people to do specifically?
Forget I'm sorry for you, I feel bad for you. Forget all of that. Basically, ask questions, make friends, and include them. If you isolate them, they're gonna go isolated. I've heard stories of people joining ISIS because they were secluded from their community. And this is the community that we're in. So include them. Talk to them, because how else would you know what they want, and how else would you know the kind of people they are? They might be the next Nobel Prize winner. They might be the next people to cure cancer. But you won't know that until you talk to them. And forget the attitude, because that's your frame of mind. It's not their frame of mind. They've been living it with it the whole life, or longer than you have. So therefore, they've had that period of like, why me, why this, and all of that. Or if they are in that period, you ask them, talk to them, make friends with them. That's the best way to do it. Just talk.
The internet is free. Alhamdulillah. If you have access, it is free. There are so many disabled content creators out there. There's so many formats you can listen to somebody on. You can listen to someone's story. You can watch someone's story. You can read someone's story. There is so much access that you can get. So there's really no excuse to be ignorant anymore. It's everywhere. There is someone's voice out there that will reach to you and that you will understand and hear their story and understand what we go through as people with disabilities, what you can do as an ally to make our lives easier, and understand where we're coming from when we complain or when we speak up or when we ask for accommodation. Remember, asking for accommodation is not complaining. It's not that I want to be treated specially. I just have these are my needs and this is how they need to be met, and you need to meet them, because if it's a basic human right of mine, I deserve it as much as anybody else does. In our Muslim community, we need to remember, right? Allah has created everybody. All of us are created by Him in which way He sees fit. He understands more than we ever will, and He is the all-knowing and the most wise. So when you say things like, inshallah, you will recover. If you eat these black seeds and drink this, healthy food, you'll be better. When you say all these things, it really doesn't make a difference. I've had enough healthy food in my life to know it really doesn't change anything. I don't want to be different. I don't want to be something else. I've accepted what I have, and I say alhamdulillah for it. When I was born, I had tubes up and down my body, in my nose and my mouth. I had tubes in places I didn't know you could put tubes. It was crazy. I grew up with an insane amount of health problems. So now that I've accepted my disability, I'm comfortable where I am. Why are other people not comfortable with it? That's what I want to know. If I don't have an issue, you shouldn't have an issue. If I'm chilling, I'm fine the way I am. I'm living my best life, alhamdulillah. I don't need you to interject and tell me otherwise. I'm comfortable the way I am. I just want you to listen to me. I want you to hear my story, and I want you to understand where I'm coming from. Because you'd be just like others said, you'd be surprised when you hear someone's story and what they've been through and what they can accomplish. But if you have the glasses of pity on, you're not gonna learn anything.
Talking to someone, I would personally follow three things. You always have to have a smile on your face and understand what you're talking to a person, and make sure he understands. It doesn't make a difference if he can't understand. You have to be patient. That's another thing. Patience and smile makes life.
What advice do you have specifically towards other Muslims who identify as having a physical disability? What advice would you give to them if they are struggling with fitting in, or if they are struggling with being bullied or being left out of the masjid and community centers? Do you have any advice or kind of words of wisdom, I guess?
Once someone said in an event, which I really liked, which was, why do you care about fitting in when you're here to stand out? And I think that's really important as well, because at the end, disability is a mindset. And when you think of yourself as disabled, or when you pity yourself, of course, others are going to do the same. When you exude that confidence from within, others will perceive you in the same way. And in many ways, I think embracing vulnerability is so powerful. And, we talk to leaders about embracing vulnerability, but that really applies to everyone, because all of us can be leaders. And in many ways, all of us are leaders. And with my challenges with mental health and stuff as well, that's one of the most powerful things that I've learned, because that's not something that you can get rid of, let's say when it comes to anxiety and stuff. But to accept it and to be okay with it is the most important thing. As they say, it's okay not to be okay. When you have those bad days, it makes you appreciate how wonderful those good days are. And I know it's easier said than done, but just to embrace it and to celebrate disability, in my mind, is really important.
Growing up like as a girl as well, being a Muslim woman is so hard. The whole world already hates you because you're Muslim, and then you add in you're a woman, and then I had to add in my disability. It's like I was playing the oppression Olympics growing up, and I'd probably have a gold medal in the oppression Olympics because I've seen a lot. I've been through a lot. But something I'll say is, no matter what you do, you will never win over everybody. No matter how you feel, how you dress, how you talk, and how you act, somebody is always going to judge you. Somebody's always going to have something to say. And there's always going to be someone negative in your life that tries to bring you down. But if you always keep in the back of your mind that you were given your disability by Allah because that is what He sees fit, there's nothing in this world that can stop you. The only thing stopping you is yourself. You are capable, you are confident, you are more than able to do anything that you put your mind to. When I left high school and I started putting my mind towards my deen and my capabilities, my life completely changed. I finally found this voice inside me. I started advocating for my rights. I took it to social media like anyone in Gen Z would. I started getting angry on Instagram, on TikTok, everywhere, and I pushed myself. I voiced out everything I've always wanted to talk about, whether it's marriage equity, whether it's community service being better, whether it's our own ummah backing us up. My own people should be protecting me, and they've been failing. No matter what you do, there's always going to be that negative voice, but you are above that voice. Keep connected to people that will empower you. Be in contact with people who understand your story. When you share your story with your disability, don't do it with the purpose of I'm going to make everyone like me. Do it with the purpose of I'm sharing my story. This is the pathway to my journey, and I welcome you along. You don't have to get everyone to like you. You just need people to understand you and know your message.